All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started because these folks on the panel here today have graciously donated their time to give us a lot of good information about this newer model called INSET. INSET stands for Intensive and Sustained Engagement Teams. We have several across the state. We have representatives from all 4 organizations with us today currently running an INSET model. And we're going to hear about INSET directly from them. So I'm going to let each individual introduce themselves and their organization, and then we'll really dig into what INSET is and what it does in communities. So I'm going to start right here. Yep, just an intro.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Modupe Mujota. I work with Baltic Street Wellness Solutions. I'm the chief. Thank you. That's the Baltic team. I'm one of 2 chief strategy officers at Baltic Street Wellness Solutions, and I also have oversight responsibility on our INSET team.
I'm Jennifer Lebeck. I'm the CEO of Recovery Options, and we also have an INSET team in Monroe County.
Hello, everybody. I am Alex Frasina. I am the Senior Director of Empowerment Services with Hands Across Long Island, and I currently oversee our INSET team and our newly formed Forensic INSET team.
Hi, my name is Raquelle Kolodny. I am the INSET Program Director with Greater Mental Health of New York, and we have INSET teams in Westchester, Rockland, Orange, Sullivan, and Putnam counties.
All right, thank you all for being here. I appreciate that you're taking a lot of time away from very, very busy programs that are doing a lot of work in the community. I want to just frame up a little bit about what an INSET team is, even though we're going to be talking about it for about an hour this afternoon. But an INSET team is really a community-based, peer-rooted model that prioritizes relationship in services over other things like referral or program compliance or some of those other things. And one of the things that I really like about the model is that it has this ability to work with people for quite a long time before they even get to the point where they're ready to say, yes, this is a service that I want. You have this opportunity for true engagement with folks for a long period of time in a way that isn't possible in many programs. And so as we go throughout the afternoon, we're going to talk with each model. Of course, each community is unique, so each team is approaching things in a little bit of a different way to meet their community's needs for the INSET programs. And we're going to explore that with each of them today. So let's start talking about what makes INSET different. We know that it's that relationship over referral, it's that time, using time as an actual intervention that makes it unique, and we know that there's a lot of choice and a lot of consent in the relationship, and so that those are some of the things that are really intrinsic to the program. With that in mind, how do these values come alive in practice? What INSET core values, what do they look like when they actually meet the reality of delivering service in the field? What does that look like for each of you?
For us at Baltic Street, the very essence of who we are is the history that we've lived, right? The lived experience. And being able to connect with the individuals in the field is really what the peer value that we hold dear, making that connection, that uniqueness. I put it this way, that we were in the street and we have become the service. So that's really the essence of who we are. It's not about values that change or principles or anything. It's the conversion of who we were on the inside, becoming alive in the service that we offer as well.
I love that, thank you. Jennifer, how about for your organization?
I think for our team, it's really living that true meeting the individuals where they are at, and not just in the wherever they are in the community, but also with what goals they choose to work on. So we're not there to prescribe, we think you should be working on this. We're meeting an individual, learning about what their preferences are, what their priorities are, and then making what we do work for them.
I think for our Halle teams, a big part of the core values is kind of that mutuality and ensuring that people are included from the first step till the end, which can look like our policies, our processes being comprised of feedback from the people we're working with and supporting. So it's making sure the voice is not just heard in how they want to be treated for their own supports, but ensuring that it's infused into how we move forward in offering the service.
For us at Greater Mental Health, and I know this is everywhere in regards to peer support, but really the concept that it's voluntary, right? So even though we are a program, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, that, like I say, we're persistent but not coercive. So we're a program that maybe will be a little more persistent, trying to get you to engage with us, trying to get you to enroll with us, than another peer program that, you know, could be, okay, we asked, they're not interested, and that's it. We're going to keep following up. But it's this, you know, the voluntary piece of it, we are always going to keep showing up. We're always going to try to work on building trust, building rapport, proving ourselves. And I think that's one of the big pieces of the outreach phase, which we'll talk about, is just really proving ourselves before we ask you to give us information or, you know, do anything like that.
I'm going to stick with you for just a minute, Raquelle, and dig into that a little further. So sustained engagement means that sometimes that could be weeks or months before that first initial yes. So when you're doing that, what strategies are you using to keep choice central when you may have other partners who may be providing some of these referrals pushing for that quicker enrollment?
Yeah, so that's something that we learned very early on. Greater Mental Health, we started an INSET program in 2018, so sort of a pilot program. So one of the things that we learned, we got these referrals from the community, an individual who's difficult to engage, an individual who really needs support, but they're not, you know, involved in traditional services. And we immediately wanted to get their information, put them in our electronic health record, and do the work, right? But we weren't able to do that. So we spoke with our organization, and, you know, they allowed us this ability to have this outreach, or pending, we call it the pending stage, right? So really all we are doing is having the person's name, and that's it, like date of birth maybe, you know. So the first thing we do is we tell the individual, this is the situation, we're not going to ask anything of you, we're not going to ask you to sign any paperwork right off the bat, we're just going to get to know you, and we tell the referral source that as well. We understand that oftentimes the referral source, say somebody's coming from the hospital, they make a referral, they want us to be on their discharge paperwork. Like, we don't do that, right? We're not going to be, we could be on discharge paperwork, but it's not a requirement, right? You don't have to work with us when you're discharged from the hospital. You might have an AOT order. We're not a part of your AOT order, right? We want to work with you, but you're not required to work with us. So really providing that education to the individual as well as to the community and the people that are making the referrals is very important. And then we just keep showing up for the person, whether we ask them, do they need a ride somewhere? Do they need connection to a certain resource? Do they need food? Whatever it is, we're gonna do a lot of that service and that support for them while they're still in that outreach phase to really continue to prove ourselves. So it does get to be a fine line sometimes. It gets to be a little difficult, you know, if we're doing so much for them in the outreach phase, then how do we get them to enroll? And we'll probably talk about that later. But the whole point is we're trying to provide this support. We're trying to, you know, help. So it's really amazing to be able to have that outreach.
Alex, along that same line, when that first engagement maybe doesn't work out the way you had hoped, or when that initial referral maybe doesn't even work out, what helps to get things moving for you, and what do you wish that sometimes your partners better understood about the pace of the work?
Sure. So a lot of times what we've been seeing is that first engagement sometimes doesn't work because how programs are explaining what we do. So a big piece of that is educating programs to ensure when they're making a referral, people understand what they're being connected to and that it's being fully explained to them. And then we also look for creative ways to collaborate on setting up a first time to meet with people. Because we understand technology may be finicky at times. People maybe haven't bought more minutes for their phones, so we have no way to connect with them. So finding creative ways that we can just share space with people to allow us to explain what we're offering. And as I look at what I wish people understood as we connect with services, it is kind of like Raquelle was saying, this is not a quick fix. This is not that someone is in INSET and now everything's going to be better from the first minute we meet. It really is about building relationship and building connection. So that takes time. And I think sometimes people think like, we made a referral last week. Hey, is everything better now? And I'm like, well, no. We're still just getting to know each other and figure out how we're going to meet. So just people understanding that it is a process and that we're also not catching individuals for your treatment or for your program. We are connecting people to what they find valuable for their own success.
So Modupe, I'd like to go to you. And can you talk about maybe a specific moment where you were doing some of that, where you were really choosing the relationship over the process, and what you did that maybe a traditional team wouldn't have done, or how you approached something differently?
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that teams typically look for is, and they're checking boxes, and like Alex and everybody else has said, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's really a customized approach, and what works for one may not work for another. So it's to look for the non-traditional nuances of every individual, and everybody's different, right? So what works for A may not work for B. Some of the things that we've tried to do is to create several touch points per individual. So apart from the typical phone calls, text messaging, visits, and all of that, we also try to curate events and interesting activities that would tease out the individual basically into an environment where they feel safe, they feel welcome, they feel able to express and find space that allows them to just be. And we found that to be very freeing for individuals. So I share a specific example. There was a gentleman who was being thrown out of one of the department stores because he had tried to pick something that he didn't pay for. And he was encountered in the street when one of our staff members was going to lunch and looking dejected and all of that, what's going on? And he explained, he was very honest. I was trying to pilfer something and I got thrown out. Okay, I have a sandwich. Would you like to share my sandwich? That's my staff member. And they shared a sandwich on the sidewalk right there and got talking about life, the trials, what happened, where are you at? And that rapport that was built over that sandwich in the moment, because INSET is about celebrating those moments, being able to capture them and celebrate them and dig into those moments. That rapport over that sandwich translated into a walk back to the office together. That would not have happened in a traditional engagement sense. And they came into the office together, had more conversation. It's about what you need, how can we help, how can we support. And with time, that confidence was built in that day, to the extent that by morning, this gentleman who would ordinarily not have been given to that kind of engagement was at the office 8 a.m. before the doors opened, wanting to, continue where he left off because he felt seen, he felt appreciated, he felt acknowledged, he felt celebrated. And so it's taking advantage of those opportunities. To me, I say, we're intense in the moment and we're intent with every moment. And that's the power of INSET.
That's a fantastic synopsis of what the program can really do in kind of a microcosm of a moment. I love that. So Jennifer, continuing on with that theme, this program can bend and adapt to people in ways that other programs maybe can't. So when we're thinking about INSET, what is the bend line and what doesn't bend? Where do you find where those boundaries have to exist in a program that's a lot more fluid?
So I think with any program that has, regulatory and funding requirements in terms of data tracking and those things, we want to make sure that we're capturing that to ensure that evidence-based, 100%. But I think that what we have really found in hearing the stories is how we create that definition that works within our community and within the population that we're serving. So when it comes to outreach and engagement and this flexibility, really stretching, to your point, the flexibility as much as we can. Our participants, they don't care what phase that they're in. It means nothing to them when we say you're in the outreach phase or you're in the engagement phase. They want to get the services that they need. They want to have access to that, and that's where that true rapport builds. So giving our participants access to on-call, to those RAP dollars, that is what creates the trust and builds the engagement, so that when they're gonna see that we're gonna help them meet those initial goals of transportation or non-traditional. Oh my goodness. I know, right? Those things that traditionally maybe aren't funded for or available to individuals until they sign on that dotted line or fulfill those consents. That's how and where that rapport builds. So we've really, as a team, bent that or flexed that or utilized that flexibility to its fullest capacity. It's on, the responsibility is on us to create the paperwork, make the data, the engagement, the outreach to track those things, but our participants should never feel that.
Thank you so much. So I think this was really important to kind of ground in those initial values, how maybe you approach things a little bit differently. But I'd like to now kind of switch to digging into some of that, doing the work in the field and what that looks like, because taking that theory and putting it into practice can be challenging in a number of ways. I know some things that I've heard in presenting in the INSET project in various counties with people that oversee county mental health systems, is concerns about things like safety, things like what does that documentation look like then if you're doing all these things for them but they're not even in your fully in your system yet, then how are you documenting? And so there are concerns in trying to use a pretty non-traditional model, but do that in collaboration with other more traditional services. And so how are you all balancing that while staying true to the peer values that are really intrinsic within this model? What does that feel like? Sure, any of you.
INSET is an investment, right? It's not going to pay off on day one. You have to be there for the long haul. And so it's important for you to, I don't want to use the terminology track, but for lack of a better word, to document the journey of every individual from the smallest to the largest moments of celebration. They all add up, right? So it's important for us, yes, they're not yet on the books, but we keep that documentation going from the get-go. There's also a lot of communication that's happening live while it's going on, so that we could be sure that we're really, really supporting these individuals. I also hesitate to use the terminology of help, because help can, like we learned from Dr. Deegan, as she said, help can become hurt, right? But support takes what you already do have and leverages that. So we're looking at what you do have as an individual and working with where you want to take what you do have. So that becomes the fodder for the flame of INSET, as far as I'm concerned. And so we're documenting those little nuances from the first time that we engage with you to identify what can trend into potential goals and helping you to see the improvements that are happening even while nothing is on paper, so to speak. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because like we have a saying at Baltic Street, if it's not documented, it doesn't exist, because you need people to help you record your progress. You need people to be able to show you, look where you're coming from. It may not seem like much because you're living your life in real time, but when we show you practically where you have, where you started and where you are now. It helps to build congruence into, oh, maybe I do need this service, maybe I will sign up. And that's what we do. So we take the time, regardless of whether or not it's in the book, and we make sure it's in your book, because your book matters, because that's your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate thinking about documentation in terms of recording a personal and journey and recovery story versus just checking a box. And so, I think a lot of times staff can look at documentation as another thing they have to get done by the end of the day, but you're describing it as something that is ultimately helping to move someone's recovery journey forward. And so I think reframing how we look at documentation, not just in INSET, but as a whole, is really important for the field, particularly as peers. Alex, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I also think a big thing that we do is that transparency. It's ensuring that people know as we meet, my peer team is really huge to let people know, like, you can ask me to not share information with other members or other people, but it's also understanding there are going to be times where something you say to me may have to go to my supervisor, and we may have to have a discussion about it, and that's not behind your back. That is something that it may happen just through our relationship. And I also think as we look at building a process and building support, not allowing risk to be confused with a need for safety. Like, we all grow through taking risks, taking chances, and to not allow our own thought of what is safe to dictate how we support people. So not falling into that trap of being risk averse.
Can you talk a little bit more about, I've gotcha. Can you talk a little bit more about field safety and what that looks like for you at Hallie, and how you are balancing the need for staff to feel safe, as well as for you as an organization to maintain general safety practices, but also to serve a population in a way that is flexible and meaningful?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things I can point to in terms of field safety is when we're doing our first encounters or connections with people, specifically at residences, not in a community setting, we go as a team. So 2 people will go out and connect with the individual. One, we make sure the person knows more than one person is coming, because that could be alarming to just have 2 people show up at your door. And the reason for that is, a piece of it is safety, because you don't know what you're walking into in terms of family dynamic or other people living in the house or just community at large. The other piece of it is we really try to take a team approach, and there is value to someone connecting with multiple members of the team, and then they can decide who they connect and click best with to work forward. So I think when we look at safety, there is a piece of our teams feeling comfortable with their supervision and their support to know that they're going in the field and they have the skills to make decisions in those moments. But it's also ensuring that we're making everyone feel safe, so including the person when we are going to bring someone else out. Or like recently, when we onboarded our forensic INSET, we created a mentor program where they were shadowing. So we ensured any meeting that they were going to, the person knew that they were coming. So we also want people to feel safe with who is showing up to them.
Jennifer, can you expand upon that for your organization at all? What do you look at in terms of field safety?
I think another piece of field safety, when we're talking about community-based interactions or touching base, is really that connection with those community-based organizations that the person is already engaged with and working with, to create not only that sense of team throughout the community, but also to help guide those interactions as well. We're doing, we recently started doing street outreach. So it's taking the opportunity to find out who else in the community is doing that work and collaborating with them as well. These are shared participants. The individuals that we're working with work with other organizations throughout the community. So creating that true treatment team, not just with the INSET team, but with the community treatment teams.
So what about, we looked a little bit at documentation, we looked a little bit at safety. What about supervision? Raquelle, can you talk about any ways in which maybe you needed to shift, deepen, or change supervision practices to support this type of work in the field?
One of the things that somebody had said this before, the work that we're doing, it's hard, right? And it is not always going to pay off right away. A lot of people go into this field, right? We want to help people. We're there. We want to see results right away. We're not going to see results right away with most of the people that we're working with. We can't say everybody. So, like I said earlier, this idea of being persistent but not coercive. That's hard for some peer staff, right? It's hard for probably most of us, peer staff or not, but it's hard because we know that this work is voluntary. We know that we don't ever want to make somebody feel obligated to work with us or forced to work with us, but at the same time, it is a program where we're working with people who were referred to us because there's concern about them, referred to us because they're not engaging in traditional services, and they're saying, we need your help and expertise with engagement and rapport building to really, bring this person in, sort of really help them find their way, their goals, what it is that, what do they want to do? How can they become, successful in their own lives, whatever that means to them. So we have times in supervision, we have to make room for that. We have to make room for staff, peers feeling like I'm doing so much work and I don't see an outcome, or we're doing so much work together and this person is calling me and cursing me out, or everybody's calling me, even like other providers, right? Other providers are calling me and saying, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Can you help with this? Can you help with that? So how do we really differentiate ourselves as peers in general, right? But also like as a team, this is a team where we're really different and we need to be able to feel comfortable and true to ourselves, our peer values, our INSET values, and make space for that in supervision. Make space for the fact that it is hard. It's not a type of program, like I said, where some peer programs, we call you once or twice, you're not interested, we sort of move on. There's other programs for people who really want that support. This is one that it's different, right? So of course, if somebody says, leave me alone, I don't ever want to see you again, we're going to get away. But if we have any inkling that there is something there, we're going to keep trying, and that might look like being nagging or whatever it is, and we just want to show that we're there, that we want to be there for you. And that could be difficult for some people because in all of our trainings we know that this is voluntary, right? We provide the information about what our service is. If they're not interested, then we move away. So we need to be able to hold that space of being uncomfortable, and also recognizing that for some peers, this is not the peer program for them, right? If they wanted another type of traditional peer program, that's okay also. So holding that space and seeing where our staff feel comfortable is really important.
Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. At Baltic Street, what we've tried to do, and we continue to learn from the things we implement, threefold. One, we have internal conferences where we discuss in our in-services, and also case conferences where our peer specialists are encouraged to share success stories and challenges as well, because you find that what I may be struggling with, somebody else in the team may already have confronted or navigated and be able to overcome. So we do that. The second area where some people struggle is, you've been engaging with somebody, they've been in the pending phase for a long time, rapport, relationship has been built, and then at the end of the day, for some reason, oh my goodness, they're not INSET. How do I let them go? Because this is a very personal work, right? It's a work of heart. How do I let them go? The beauty of Baltic Street is that we're an agency of programs, and we therefore are able to handhold people and, kind of send them off into different other programs and follow up on how they're being serviced. So our peer specialists are also kind of, supervision is framed around that, particularly when it's difficult to let go. That's another area. And then the last is celebration of milestones. Because you're so invested as a peer specialist, you're kind of tunnel visioned on, you know, I have to get this done, I have to follow through with this person, I have to do that. Sometimes you don't come up for air and just appreciate the beauty of the roses and the flowers that your work is helping to plant, your work is helping to tend, your work is helping to grow. And so sharing with our peer specialists and giving them the opportunity to look back and celebrate those milestones, capture them, celebrate them in the reporting, celebrate them at those case conferences, in services, doing a shout out sometimes, maybe all you need. And that has helped. We also have chat sessions on the phone where people are kind of giving feedback. This is what's going on. This is where I'm at. I'm heading to this place. Oh, great job. Travel safely. You'll be amazed how those little validations I call it carrying your team along with you through the day. They're with you from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. Now, INSET never goes to bed, right? So we're kind of in your face all day. And those channels, though they look small, have been such a contributing factor into how well I believe the team is bonding and growing through the process of INSET. One area as well is something people have mentioned where referrals are coming left, right, and center because the community kind of believes INSET is the answer to all prayers. No, it's not. And being able to say no without offending or coming across as being standoffish is also quite the art. And it's difficult for our peer specialists because one of the things we try not to say is no, right? So finding ways to say no and doing it in a sensitive manner that is respectful and ensures that people don't get lost is important. So we've also made sure that we follow through on the commitments that we do make.
So in thinking about how you're doing the work out in the field, and I've heard kind of some snippets of some great stories and some kind of practice of how this works in practicality. I know some of your programs are newer than others. Greater Mental Health, you've been doing this for 7 years now, so you've got a ton of outcome data. Some of your programs are quite a bit newer, really in your first couple of years, and I think the forensic program's still in its first year, isn't it, Alex?
Yes.
Yeah, so some of your programs don't have 7 years worth of data and outcomes to draw from, but really want to talk a little bit about where is the evidence base for this? What are we starting to see in the newer programs? What have we been able to prove out over time in terms of how INSET works to really change lives for those that have been more difficult to engage traditionally? So with that kind of level set, I'm going to start with you, Alex, and ask, do you have some examples of some ways in which some metrics help to persuade perhaps a more skeptical partner that INSET can work?
Sure. I think, and I believe we go into this again later, but we really lean into some non-traditional data to prove the validity of the service. One of the biggest things that people kind of, it flips perception about is right now with our Halley team, our INSET team that's been running over a year, we have an 85% rate of people who meet or talk to us having multiple meetings with our team. So that doesn't necessarily mean they end up enrolling, but once someone talks to the team we have now once, they want to at least talk again, which I think is a huge just factor and speaks to the team's ability to connect with people, the team's ability to just be human and be interesting and engaging. It doesn't always go somewhere to an outcome, but a willingness to re-engage. And then another thing that we're seeing with those that are enrolled is in true mutuality, there are times where we have difficult discussions with people. Raquelle pointed out to like someone calling and cursing out the peer team. We have navigated that, and our team is really great at having their boundaries and having those discussions with people about kind of what is expected for all of us to make this work, and seeing the rate of people reconnecting post a difficult discussion. Because This is voluntary. People don't owe us anything. We could have a difficult discussion and never hear from them again. But we are seeing more and more people that actually not only reconnect post a difficult discussion, but really start to buy in from that difficult discussion because they see that we are coming from a place of caring and wanting to walk with them, and not a place of like punishment, judgment. It's really just like, hey, this is how this feels for me. So how can we work together to move forward? So I think the two real things that people kind of switch their perspective are just the rate of, once they meet with the team, the desire to work with them, and the ability to stay consistent with meeting even when things aren't going well.
And I love that leaning into, especially for a relatively non-traditional program, that leaning into some non-traditional metrics that measure, like Modupe, you talked about, that measure those smaller moments, those smaller gains that maybe are not always as celebrated as the wins that they really are. So I love that you're doing that in a really formal way. Jennifer, how are you have the newest INSET team outside of the forensic team. So how are you and your organization navigating some of those documentation and reporting requirements with that kind of slow relational nature of the work? You know, the need to have the outcomes with but it takes time to build this sort of program.
I think we've really appreciated joining the monthly collaboratives, talking to the other teams that are doing the work too, and then also having those transparent, organization to OMH specific conversations about this is what we're seeing, this is what's meaningful for where we are. These are what our providers, those referral sources that we're getting, that it takes time to get a new program up and aware with the community members that we're receiving referrals from. So I think, level setting and, setting realistic expectations for a true, right from the ground up program, and really planting our flag as a program and supporting one another with those referral sources, whether it's a no, level setting with this is what you can expect when you make a referral, this is what the program does, and really planting, our flag on these meaningful engagements. We're not going to say it's an engagement unless it's a meaning. What does that meaningful engagement looks like? Again, regardless of outreach, engagement, phases, looking at opportunities for creating, what those milestones or those celebratory moments look like. I think really staying true to the model that we have in our county, that we've taken from the other teams, but then pushing forward with that and knowing that we're going to get there, right? It takes time to gather data and gather outcomes, and we're committed to putting in the 5 years of work that this program has ahead of it.
What about you at Baltic Street? What does that look like? What does that look like for you? You really talked about kind of the relationship and the celebrating the moments. How do you track outcomes and data in a way that also continues to celebrate that?
We do it on two sides at Baltic Street. We have something that we call the efficiency report. The efficiency report measures engagements with individuals per peer specialist. And it also tracks those engagements based on different channels of communication. Apart from just looking for how many times the engagement took place, we're also looking for practical demonstration of growth and progression in the quality of engagements that are happening. And I give an example. If for somebody the initial contact was, or expressed preference was, communicate with me via text messaging, we expect that to happen for only so long before there should be some basis for trust to have been built to the extent where they're now comfortable with phone calls. After the phone calls have gone on for a while, we're looking for in-person engagements, and vice versa, depending on where you started from. But what that does, the efficiency report, for both the team member and the people that are being served, it allows us, one, to see the progression in the relationship and the trust build, but from the perspective of the staff member, it also is almost an announcement of how well they're doing in their engagement. And it encourages them to try different strategies. It also encourages them to stretch their imagination when it comes to innovation as to when to make contact, how to make contact, the frequency of contact, and so on and so forth. And they complement that with activities that they put in place, because those different touch points are also opportunities for feedback from the different individuals they're serving and from the communities that they serve as well. That feedback goes into creative activities such as the pottery class, the art class, the dance class, the cookery class, and so on and so forth, that they put together at a beautiful Isaac Brown Wellness Center. And people come and they partake of these events that also help to deepen engagement, but build community as well. So for individuals that are potential INSET clients, one of the factors that can help recovery is to help with isolation, feelings of isolation and loneliness. And when you build communities around commonality, it helps them to come more out of their shell. And that is of benefit both to the peer specialist and to the person that they're providing services to.
And I really love the idea of taking data, taking something that can feel a little static and maybe not as dynamic or as interesting as we might all like, and using it as a vehicle to help individuals that are delivering services channel their own creativity and channel their own innovation, and to frame data in that way, and to help staff see the usefulness in something that, it's called an efficiency report. It doesn't sound like great Friday night reading, right? But it can be used for, as a vehicle to really channel innovation and imagination, and framing it that way and then utilizing it that way. That's part of how we look at things differently as peers, and I think part of how these non-traditional programs really support people differently, so that's amazing. All right, so as we're moving past outcomes, I really want to just give each organization a couple of minutes to dig into some of the ways that they're doing the work a little bit differently, or some of their personal innovations, or their personal directions that they've dug into based on their own communities. So we're going to start with Baltic Street. You have done a lot of community work over the many years that you've been in existence. How have you worked through bridging that, that working on the street to other types of service models, and done all of that without losing the peer identity?
Well, Baltic Street is a house of peers. Peer in leadership at board level all the way down to line staff. So we're not doing something that's abstract. We're living our experience and coming alive in our communities. Basically, as my CEO would say, we're showing up and showing out. It's who we are, and we transition from who we are, or translate from who we are into the service that we offer. I've heard it many times, you treat people how they want to be treated, or treat people how they should be treated. Who's the judge of that? It's the people themselves. And it's in sharing how we lived our experience, if they would have us share it, that allows us to form the basis of value systems and translate into the quality of service that we offer. So in a short sentence, having said all of that, we're living the life that we once lived and sharing the experience that helped us to become who we are today on a daily basis.
And how has that work helped you to shape trust building in communities that have been harmed?
There's a popular saying, show me my friends, I'll tell you who you are. All my friends are people that have lived experience. They're people that life has happened to and are therefore happening to life now. That's it. We're not promising what we can't deliver. We're promising on the basis of the lives that we've lived. We're not prescribing anything to you. We're not throwing anything in your face. We're saying, this is how I navigated my journey. Take from it what you will, and I'll be there to support you through it. That's it. There are no frills, no bells, no whistles. That's just it.
I love that, kind of transparent authenticity as a method for trust building. Absolutely. Raquelle, I'm going to shoot all the way down to you and ask about greater mental health. I know, because you have been with this program for 7 years, both you and the organization have kind of evolved to meet the needs of communities. So what kinds of organizational changes did Greater Mental Health make over time to make this type of work possible?
I know we've talked about it a lot already, but the idea of outreach, the idea of the pre-enrollment, that was a change originally that had to be made at the organizational level, right? So this was not a traditional. This was not traditional. We normally, like for other programs, somebody comes in, they agree to the service, you enroll them, and that's it. So having to, we did the work a little bit. We noticed, okay, this is not working, right? We can't just enroll people. We're not establishing the rapport and the engagement that we need. So we as an organization, we recognize that we need to be different. Our approach needs to be different. The services need to be different. We're working with people who potentially have felt damaged by the system, damaged by the mental health system, wronged by the mental health system, and we want to change that. So having the ability to have this pre-enrollment that allows for the extended engagement, that was, from an organizational level, we started that, and then OMH has been really great in allowing and continuing that, right? I mean, I think it is also something that every agency has to recognize. It is I don't want to say risky, but like it's scary for some people, right? It is scary to not have all of the information and the traditional demographic information that you would get from somebody that's enrolling in a program. So there's a level of risk there. And from an organization, like all of the organizations here, we've taken on that risk, and it has been extremely beneficial. I know I could probably speak for all of us. We're grateful for OMH to continue to allow that, and really they don't ask for a whole lot of information when somebody's in outreach, and gives us the ability to keep the person in there for as short or long as possible. And I think, that really has been one of the biggest reasons for the success that we've seen. So, yeah, I mean, I know it's now part of the model, but we sort of had to fight for that a little bit to begin with.
Alex, what about Hallie? Hallie's an organization that over time has really been known for their radical hospitality. And you have talked a lot about some of those non-traditional indicators of engagement that you've tracked over time. How else are you as an organization kind of navigating some of those lines between, the mutual aid, the radical hospitality, and the more formal service while staying true to those peer values?
Yeah, I think the hard part for me, programmatically, at times is checking myself and checking our team, because we lean so heavily in that person-centered, person-connected approach. And I think for me, I really had to lean into kind of that data collection and other side of things. But what we really look at is how are we affecting people and how are we supporting people. And I think in my not my old roles, but prior to really being a part of program development, I would see the good things happening, and what we have really learned to do is how do we share that story to make sure that people understand the impact. Because it's one thing for us to notice it, it's another thing for other people to understand how it's impacting people. So we're really leaning into how are we not only doing the good work, but how are we seeing and sharing the good work that's being done, which was not always a step I'll speak for myself personally, that I took. I just knew peer work, and we were doing it well and working well. So it's really just formulating how we share that. And I also wanted to share, I kind of thought of it as we were going through the last question. I think everyone up here right now has embodied this ability and willingness to share with each other, because yes, we're all in this together in terms of INSET, but the reality is we are also, there's going to be a time where we're competing for funding. There's going to be a time where people are looking at our numbers and maybe trying to pit us against each other. But it has been really helpful to be able to reach to other people doing the work and share experiences, share what is working. And I think the more, especially now, that programs break out of this fear of competition and openly support each other's programs, the better it is in the long run for ourselves and the people we're working with. So I really just want to applaud everyone that's up here for how we've shared and been open and been willing to be vulnerable with each other at times about our challenges with implementing this service.
I love that, Alex. I also love your tee up, because I'm going to swing to Jennifer and talk about collaboration specifically. So Jennifer, so much of what Recovery Options has done has been around that collaboration and that sense of building community, whether with other organizations or actually in the community. So in thinking about that, what kinds of lessons have you learned about collaboration? What kind of barriers have you encountered, and how are you overcoming that?
I think I'm going to continue a little bit from what you said. Is it really comes down to the program staff that all of our organizations have. You know, not just any peer specialist can do the work of a brand new program. You know, a lot of us were building the plane while we were flying it and trying to get out there and really teach the community about a program that we ourselves were just learning about. And so that takes a really specialized peer specialist or peer worker to be able to do that. And it does come down to connections, you know, recruiting those peers that are familiar with the other organizations and the other partners, and have those relationships not only with the individuals who need the service, but those organizations who we're getting referrals from, not only other organizations, but other county entities, the county SPOAs that we're working with, the LGUs that we're working with, to really create that buy-in of a model that we're projecting. You know, we want people to be supportive and responsive to the service that we have in the community. And so really leveraging those connections and finding those peer staff who feel able and willing and have the desire to get into those non-traditional areas and really reach individuals where they're at. That's really where the true collaboration starts, is within your own organization.
All right, I would like to kind of close off the panel portion before I open it up to questions that any of you may have, with a couple of rounds of kind of rapid fire questions. So just kind of some quick answers on a few things. I'll start at this end and work our way down. One myth about hard to engage people that you want to retire.
It's not the people that are hard to engage, it's the system that's hard to trust. We have to put the effort into engaging. We have to prove we're honest and we're reliable and we are different from what the individual has experienced before.
That people that are difficult to engage don't know better. I think that is the biggest misnomer. It's people have experiences and they have a reason to distrust.
That people are difficult to engage, I would say that they just haven't found what is going to get them to engage yet. So there's something out there for them that they just haven't been offered. So it's not that they're difficult to engage, it's that they have not been offered what they're looking for.
A tough act to follow, y'all.
No, I need to go, you get to go first on the next one.
Thank you. No, I mean, funny enough, as I think about it, difficult people, I think love heals, kindness heals, and just being able to see people through eyes that don't hold any judgment or have any expectation, but just to love and to help and to have a true desire to see people feel better. INSET is not easy.
No.
It's not easy. The individuals you're trying to engage are people that are in pain, and the world chastises them for that pain. We just need to be kind. There was a recent experience where a lady was in severe crisis and people whipped out their phones before they whipped out their sympathy and empathy. And that's what our world needs. We have to stop being onlookers and voyeurs behind our phones and just be human. And that's what our people are, human.
I'm going to let you go ahead and go first on this next one since I made you go last. A micro win that you celebrate that others might miss.
No, I wish I went last. A micro win. I think it's that point where the engagement happens, the light comes on. I have members of my INTET team in the house, so shout out to you all first. Thank you for all that you do. I appreciate you a whole ton. But yeah, when that magic happens and they finally get them enrolled, it's almost like they can't wait to get into the office to file the paperwork. And that's exciting.
First and last time anybody ever wanted to do paperwork?
Right? They're excited to do it because it's like, wow, I finally get to work with this individual, and it's just great. So yeah, I think for me, it's that spark that is exciting.
Jennifer, one micro win that you're celebrating in INSET that others might miss.
When a participant picks up the phone post-referral, right? So if I'm sitting with anyone, they're going to say yes because they may inadvertently feel that. So they're not with the referral source, they're out of the hospital, they're doing their own thing, and they pick up the phone or they answer the text truly on their own with no one else around, because that means that they're at least open to having the conversation.
Alex.
I would say when an individual handles a situation differently than they have in the past. For example, someone who has engaged in a recovery center and had difficulty engaging with those around them, and there's a time they get frustrated and curse out a staff rather than threatening physical action. And I think sometimes it gets missed because it's still not the quote-unquote behavior you would like, but it is a step in a direction, and to expect someone to just change everything about themselves in one day is not realistic. So someone taking a step to be a step closer to where they want to be.
I'm going to say the same thing as that was said, is a returned call or a text, which might seem like not a big deal to some people, but for us it's a breakthrough, right? For us it's that foundation of trust that's being built, or somebody asking for help, right? Somebody reaching out because they do need something and they feel comfortable enough with us to let us know that they need it. For some people, that's really hard, asking for help. So that as well.
All right, last round. One program tweak that you think would unlock better outcomes tomorrow.
More money. More money. And I say that with all sense of responsibility. I was having a conversation with Alex just yesterday about how the need is so great and the resources so limited. Definitely more money. INSET is needed. INSET is valuable. INSET is a treasure. And I think the ability to scale INSET is going to be phenomenal when it comes to outcomes and recovery opportunities and potential. So I would definitely say more money.
Well, I'm always about more money. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say a nice tweak that could support is priority designation that rivals that of AOT, so that people can get into the services that they desire to be in without having extensive waits. And also state-led guidelines for AOT programs and hospitals and how they should be utilizing INSET rather than leaning on AOT.
So when you're talking about priority designation, you mean like housing designation and whatnot?
Housing,
like jumping
housing,
up the list
clinic
with
access,
SPOA,
yep.
all that kind. Perfect, love that. All right, you've heard it first here, Raquelle.
All right, I don't know how to. The numbers, the reports that we're submitting, all that stuff are helpful, right? Enrolling somebody is helpful. That's really where, when we're looking at the enrollment, that's where we're looking at our success, sort of, right? But somehow recognizing that pre-enrollment engagement is a success, right? Pre-enrollment engagement, a lot of the work that we do is in that area. So for me personally, I know that I guess I struggle with that, right? I struggle with how do we get somebody into the enrolled stage when we have already done so much of the work and we've captured so much of somebody's needs already, right, in that pre-enrollment stage. Yeah, so that's much more programmatic, but I think it's something, the work that we're already doing, it's just how do we track it.
And Jennifer.
I would echo Raquelle in terms of, we have a lot of great data points that we're collecting, but I think that looking at refining them, now that we have, 1 to 7 years of data, looking at how we're refining that, we want to move from the, how many the quantitative and really look to the qualitative. And I think that there's been some great groundwork there, but I think that really continuing to look at the qualitative piece, which is harder to define. And so we have to start somewhere. But looking at being able to still capture that data in a qualitative way, because we're moving from, the data points to the power is really in the story. So looking at, that's what's going to drive the funding. That's what's going to help create the buy-in or create the story with, the priority access or what that could look like. We're moving to now those story pieces of data that's really going to be meaningful as we're kind of evolving the process.
All right, so you've heard a ton from our panelists here this afternoon about what INSET is, how they're approaching it in various ways in their various communities, how it may differ from other types of similar community services, and how important it really is in helping those quote-unquote hard-to-engage folks, those folks who haven't yet been offered the right thing for them. But a lot of what I'm hoping that you're hearing is that a lot of this work is about slowing down, really prioritizing that relationship over a lot of the other normal programmatic things like paperwork that we often prioritize. And so we're going to take a little bit of time here at the end to let you ask any questions that you have about the INSET program from any of the panelists up here. So does anybody have any questions? Go ahead. And I don't have a mic runner, so
Okay, I can speak.
yell loud, yes.
My name is Noah Gray, and I have a quick question about purpose. In the INSET program, where does purpose lie in terms of people, in helping people to discover purpose for themselves?
Well, from the Baltic Street perspective, we work with the 8 dimensions of wellness. It means, therefore, that we're pursuing goals across the entire spectrum of human existence and hoping that you will find fulfillment somewhere along that. Remember, we're not going to choose the goal for you. We're going to help to discover what it is. So you have this bouquet of different spheres of your life, and you're encouraged to seek recovery in all of them, or at least seek wellness in all of them, with the expectation that purpose will be established in all of that.
I also think, kind of like Raquelle has been saying around that pre-enrollment phase or that outreach phase, a big piece of what we are doing within these programs is breaking down some system enforced beliefs that people may have. A lot of people, when we speak to them, we don't use the word goal because that word has been weaponized against people or created for people. It's really about helping people re-envision and reconnect with their power. And that's why that process can be slow. That's why the process takes a while to get to that enrollment phase, because a lot of people have never authentically, genuinely been asked what they want to do. They've been fictionally asked, like, what is your goal? And then it's get a job and make more friends. And that's on everyone else's goal too. So really allowing people to break down and say, like, no, we're not asking like everyone else asked, and helping people explore that. So that could look like going to different opportunities in the community, helping people pay for experiences so that they would know if that's something that they would want to invest in moving forward. So it's just giving that opportunity for people to really know it is about them, because a lot of systems say it's about them, and people get comfortable with that. So it's really just reconnecting with, like, no, this really is about you.
Other questions? Yes.
If I'm not wrong, there in the team, there is a clinician, correct?
So I believe it's like 0.25 or it's not a full, it's not a full-time clinician, and it is not a full-time nurse practitioner. So yes, there is some of that oversight for, within the program model. It is a multi-systemic team, and that's really to have, that holistic approach. It's not to provide a clinical service. We don't have clinicians. We don't have a nurse practitioner providing a clinical service per se, but it's really to be available, like any other multidisciplinary team, to really have that perspective in terms of really holding true to the fidelity of the model. And I know a lot of our organizations are fortunate enough to have clinicians who also identify as peers, and peers who have pursued their clinical license. And so it's an opportunity to hold space for all of those areas of expertise, to make sure that the service and the program we're providing is really holistic and offering that opportunity to the participants that we're serving.
So if you're a peer-run agency, you could contract with a clinician to be part of that team?
So some contract and some employ directly. So you can also directly employ clinicians as a peer-run agency. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes.
Good afternoon. My question to the panelists on the dais about the INSET programs: if you could run through the field of dreams and there was no limit to resources, whether it be policy, finances, or even how people think, what is one thing you would change that would exponentially increase your success or your outcomes?
Well, he works for Baltic, so you should go first.
Let's talk about that.
Are you saying that's a Monday morning
Let's
conversation?
meet for coffee, shall we?
Does anybody have like a field of dreams moment, like that moment where you're in the field and you're going, oh, if only I could X with this person, or if only I could Y for that person?
Yeah, I was gonna say the hard part with that field of dreams is it's really based in other services existing that are either supposed to exist or would be helpful to exist. I know, as I was speaking actually before this, around when someone is ready to no longer be a part of the INSET team, but they would like ongoing peer support, if they're not coming to a recovery center on Long Island, where are they getting that? Where are they getting that peer that they can just connect to in the community? other than this program. So it's really building supports outside of this that are community-based, that can continue the good work of really being focused on the person. And then my selfish wish is funding for like things like a music studio, because music has been huge. Like we've joked about forming a Halley INSET band because we have so many rappers and musicians, that just creating an opportunity to truly fund programs that are so outside the box but are meeting people with what they desire.
So looking at those opportunities to use personal interests to create purpose. All right.
I think a Field of Dreams would also be that advocacy touch point, and really taking the data and the stories that we're collecting and not only using it as evidence-based for the INSET model, but also utilizing the stories that we're collecting, the data that we're collecting to influence more systemic change, right? So the housing, the food insecurity, the other building out of the systems continuum, it's no one program acts, provides every service. So our service relies on the ability to refer to other services, so that sharing of collective data to create change systemically.
I think like Alex said, after INSET, now what? You don't want to build a dependency, but you want to be sure that the individuals that have come to expect or have become familiar with some level of support are not just left in the lurch. They cannot be INSET forever, right? But the promises that have been kept by the INSET program, how do we sustain those promises being kept by the rest of the community that's supposed to provide these supports? So that we don't lapse back into old habits as a people and drop these individuals again. The cycle of trust, when you've already gotten somebody to build trust in a system, if it fails, the hurt is deeper, and it's difficult to rebuild. So I think that for me would be the Field of Dreams. How do we sustain the environment that has been created by the comfort that INSET offers?
I think we probably have time for one more question if there are any others out there. But not Mark.
I'm glad to see the world in 10 seconds. It's beautiful. I love seeing it. And I love the way y'all articulate it and how y'all represent. It's beautiful to see. I love to see the growth. We continue to support you guys. Those who don't know, those who don't, they find out. Anyway, thank you. Appreciate you guys.
All right, well, with that, I think we should thank our panel. They've been amazing. They've given up a lot of their time to be here. A number of their team members are also here learning and growing with all of you, so we really appreciate the organizations that are running INSET coming out to support learning and growing programs like these. If you do not have plans in 15 minutes, we do have our annual awards ceremony happening in Marty's Lounge at 5 o'clock. And I'm hoping to see a lot of you there. And we do have an awardee in the room with us now. So let's all head over to Marty's Lounge and support her.